as all this news is coming in, most of it not seeming all that great for President Trump. Dana, you have some new reporting.
Well, I talked to a source familiar with President Trump's thinking who said that the president is down. Obviously tired, which is understandable, but not feeling all that great, despite the public bluster that we've seen and heard from his campaign, from his children, that the president is seeing what's happening. He is seeing that in some of these key states that will determine whether he is president or not, his lead is shrinking. Or if Joe Biden is ahead, notwithstanding what we just saw, this is before that just happened, it's just not looking that good for the president. And the sense from the source that I spoke to is that the president is starting to see this slip away. That's the mood of the president. Now, could that change like this with changes in the votes? Of course. But it also kind of dovetails with some reporting that we had earlier from our colleague Kevin Liptak, who said the president is calling to allies, saying that he doesn't understand the strategy that his campaign is using to kind of have these lawsuits in various states. Why didn't they try this more aggressively before the votes were counted? So there's some hand-wringing going on behind the scenes while there is some, public bravado.
Yeah.
It's quite different.
And I don't blame him for being confused about his legal team's strategy, because it is a little confounding when you actually look at what is going on. We've been talking all night about the way in which the strategy is talking out of one side of their mouth in Arizona and in Nevada, and then out of another in Pennsylvania and Georgia and Michigan. So it is confusing. And earlier in the year, the president really did push his team and the RNC to have a very aggressive legal strategy. And I think he really had hoped that a lot of this stuff would be resolved before we got to this point. And much of it actually had been resolved and litigated in the courts, which is why you're seeing some of the legal challenges that they're putting out now are, as we've discussed, fairly thin. And so I'm not surprised to see that the president finds it to be a somewhat unconvincing case.
But do you think
for victory.
Do you think that his issue is that he's not finding their legal strategy now to be up to the standards that he wants, or he doesn't understand why they're not able to stop the counting of votes? I mean, that seems more like in keeping with Donald Trump. His legal team was fairly aggressively out there.
Yeah.
I mean, they were trying to stop mail-in ballots in any number of states, including the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I mean, the problem is that just because he's president, he's not able just to stop mail-in ballots. He's not able just to stop the counting of ballots. I think, with all due respect, I think you're giving him a little bit too much credit.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit of both, that he wants to stop the ballots from being counted. But again, I'm sure he's not blind to the fact that these cases that are being brought are long shots.
Exactly.
I mean, they're just hard to...
But that's not his legal team's fault.
Well, no, it's not. But as we've been saying all night, they are throwing everything they can up against this wall. The president obviously wants to win. He wants the ballots to perhaps not be counted. But I think he, as someone who, as you pointed out, is very litigious, he understands that these cases are not as rock solid as he probably.
That's exactly right. I think that he's just, it sounds to me like he is just voicing his frustration. And the one thing he can hang it on right now, because it's the way that they are being active in the Trump campaign, is by the lawsuits right now. And because he actually has so much experience in the courts, maybe not in election law, but experience in the courts, that he is, seeing that the campaign is just kind of trying to find ways to publicly say, we don't believe this, we're going to challenge this, but it's not necessarily something that is really, he's not standing on firm ground.
But he doesn't have experience winning in courts. He has experience with completely frivolous lawsuits. Yeah. Well, let's table this for a second. I want to go to Caitlin Collins at the White House, who can give us some more insight into President Trump's frustrations about what's going on. Caitlin?
Well, it's so interesting to hear you guys talk about the legal strategy, because this legal strategy came about because after Fox News called Arizona for Joe Biden last night, something that we should note CNN has not done yet, I am told by sources that's when the president went into this kind of panic mode with aides after thinking that he was going to win and pull this off, that he started instructing them to start filing these lawsuits and start to pursuing litigation that we have seen play out all day. And so that is what campaign aides have really spent the day doing. And some have conceded, in part, Jake, it's so they can buy themselves more time as they are waiting on votes in places like Arizona to come in. The other thing the president has spent the day doing, since we have not seen him in person today, and the White House has called a lid, meaning we are not expecting any appearances from him, though we could hear from him, of course, on Twitter tonight, Jake, is angrily calling Republican governors, these people who he believes are his allies, as he is trying to will what is happening and what we are seeing playing out from actually happening. And that includes Doug Ducey of Arizona, Brian Kemp of Georgia, and Ron DeSantis of Florida, I'm told by sources. He has been angrily calling them because he is not happy with what he's seeing. Of course, Florida is a different situation. I think that's more of a venting situation from what I've understood so far, but that is what the president has spent his day doing. So he is angrily calling these Republican governors, but casting doubt on the legal strategy that he has told his own aides to pursue. And of course, if you talk to the campaign aides who are working on this, some of them obviously do not believe some of these lawsuits will be successful, but they feel basically like they've run out of options at this point. And when the president feels like he's backed into a corner, often throughout the decades of his life before he was even in office, his go-to strategy has been to sue or to file lawsuits or to try to mount some kind of legal challenge to stop what is happening from happening.
Thank you, Caitlin Collins. That's exactly what I thought was going on. The idea that he's waging these frivolous lawsuits because he's telling them to do it. Anyway, Caitlin, thank you so much. Let's go to Arlette Saenz, who's with the Biden team in Wilmington, Delaware. What are you hearing from Team Biden, Arlette? There's obviously still a narrowing race in Arizona. We don't know what's happening in Nevada, a narrowing race in Pennsylvania, and of course in Georgia.
Well, Jake, they are closely watching these results coming in Arizona, but at this point, they are still projecting confidence about his standing in that state. The Biden campaign acknowledges that the margin could tighten in a county like Maricopa County, but they don't expect that his current standing will be overcome, even as the Trump campaign has pushed that narrative over the course of the day. Now, Arizona and Nevada, another state the Biden campaign is looking to hold on to. Those are states that Joe Biden only visited once as the Democratic nominee, which is quite the contrast to the time and resources he devoted to those blue walls he was trying to reclaim this time around. Now, the Biden campaign started the day projecting confidence about that blue wall, the Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And at this point, they have had 2 of those 3 states called in their favor. Now, heading and looking forward to Pennsylvania, the Biden campaign says they still remain confident as those votes continue to be counted, and say that they will remain vigilant about ensuring that every last vote is counted in that state.
All right. Arlette Saenz, thank you so much, in Wilmington, Delaware. And we should also talk about the fact that I do, and I'm sure you do, expect Arizona to narrow. I mean, I do think that I do think that margin of victory, which is
It started to.
What is it?
And
Now it's like a little more than, there you go, 50.7 to 47.9.
yeah,
a little
and the
narrower than it
Biden
was before.
campaign, they also expect it to narrow, but they believe that he will win. So yeah, it's not going to be a blowout in Arizona, but the question is, can President Trump make it up with the votes that are outstanding?